All right. Big brain tactic here from row your boat Khanna says to Joe Biden that he should visit college campuses amid protests. Please, I want Joe Biden to do that. Students, this is your chance to really find out firsthand just how Joe Biden and Democrats really feel about you. By the way, Ro Khanna, keep on coming up with those big brain tactics, right? Keep on doing it, buddy. You're doing great. You're doing great. So let me go ahead and pull up this article here from The Hill because there's a lot to take in on this. For example, Representative Ro Khanna said Sunday that President Biden should and will visit college campuses amid the ongoing pro-Palestinian protests that have roiled the country. Host Margaret Brannon asked Ro Khanna on Face the Nation whether the ongoing protests were becoming a distraction from the key issues they are protesting. She also noted that Ro Khanna has been on several college campuses in recent days to engage in conversations with students as the protests continue across the country. Just like how AOC did and Ilhan Omar did, and then when things started to crack down, they were, hey, where are they? Where are the Democrats? Oh, that's right. Nowhere to be found, period. Simple as that. Ro Khanna, you think it's a really good idea for Biden to visit these college campuses after what happened to all those students across the country? And to these protesters, to these activists and organizers, just remember, the Democrats are only going to use you or placate to you in order to secure your vote. But once the Democrats get what they want, they're just going to leave you on red. So sorry. He goes on to say, no, I don't think so. I mean, in Wisconsin, the issues that came up first were abortion rights that died under the Biden-Harris administration. Second, the cost of living and what the president's going to do on student loans. By the way, Joe Biden is the architect of the reason why, because he sided with credit card corporations to make student debt what it is. And for housing and rent, Gaza came up, he said. Oh, really? It did. But you know, one of the conversations in Madison with Jewish Americans and Arab Americans was extraordinarily civil, thoughtful, and constructive. Really? Where was this at? So I think in a lot of campuses, there are 4,000 of them in the United States, there's actually constructive dialogue taking place. Really? After what you and your fantastic friends in the Congress just passed in regards for Israel and its definition for anti-Semitism, and how even the New Testament could get hit? Yeah, that's going to go well with conservatives. By the way, Republican voters, Republican politicians voted on that too. Just throwing it out there. Brandon asked Ro Khanna why Biden was not engaging in those conversations. I think the president should and will get out there on campuses. Can you not tell the truth, Ro? Khanna then went on to say that college protests have resulted in the awakening in Washington regarding the Israel-Hamas war. Oh, it's over. They just woke up, folks. By the way, what's happening all across these college campuses? Now, for example, I want to point out that UCR, University of California, Riverside, is looking into, they haven't made any statement yet, but will explore the removal of University of California, Riverside will potentially divest from Israel. Now, they haven't done anything fully yet, but this stuff like this is going down. Because Democrats, voters, protesters are angry.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I can't compete with it. I just want to do a few things. First, I want to thank all of you. As Samia said, we should be proud of the fact that we got through this together in a peaceful way. And that's a credit to everybody here. I particularly want to call out... Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I particularly want to call out these two young women. Yes. You couldn't have better leaders, and I mean that sincerely. From the beginnings of our discussion, it was always clear we all had the same goal.
Now, I don't know if these colleges will truly follow through with their promises. But before we push forward, let's hear from Ro Khanna himself. The great liar. After all, these politicians are nothing more than professional liars. Let's go ahead and pull up this tab and this video firsthand.
Are we at the point now where the protesters are becoming a story unto themselves and a distraction from the issues that they're protesting?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in Wisconsin, the issues that came up first were abortion rights Second, the cost of living and what the president was going to do on student loans and for housing and rent. Gaza came up, but one of the conversations in Madison with Jewish Americans and Arab Americans was extraordinarily civil, thoughtful, and constructive. So I think in a lot of campuses, there are 4,000 of them in the United States, there is actually constructive dialogue taking place.
But the president isn't doing those kind of listenings.
No, he's not. And anytime there is a protester, they're dragged out, right? Anytime the Democrats are challenged, be they Hillary Clinton, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, or even you, they're dismissed. The protests aren't going to go away. And if you think that fantastic bill that you guys passed in the House is going to go over well with the American people, you're going to be rudely awakened. Plus, also, it has to pass in the Senate. And we'll see. If the Senate does pass it, then, hey, free speech is kind of screwed then.
Sessions. Why?
I think the president should and will get out there on campuses. I think
he gets shouted down Genocide Joe when he goes to events.
And look, that's part of protest. I condemn any protest that incites violence or that is anti-Semitic. As someone whose grandfather spent 4 years in jail with Gandhi, I mean, the whole point of Satyagraha was nonviolent protest. But we have to understand that this is a defining moment for this generation, similar to anti-Vietnam protests, anti-apartheid protests, anti-Iraq war protests. And they're telling us that over 30,000 people have died. It's time for this war to end. It's time for the hostages to be released.
What are you going to do about it, Ro? Do you even have an answer? Remember that first video of Kristi Noem, the governor from South Dakota, that I played earlier in the show? They can't tell the truth to save their lives. They can't do it. Let's go ahead and pull up this other video here. Apologies.
While you were talking about very specific policy changes for very specific allegations, you also see at some of these protests things that are mixed in there, either outside agitators or extreme rhetoric. Your Democratic colleague, Alyssa Slotkin, was just tweeting about this protest at GW University. She said there were individuals shouting guillotine, guillotine, and having a mock trial of school administrators.
Oh, heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. Like, we haven't seen that before in protests. Not only here in the United States, but around the world. Okay? People are angry. They want to get their point across. First Amendment right and everything else.
She says that creates a climate of fear for Jewish students. What's being lost here in the conversation?
Well, she's right. I mean, you can't be shouting guillotine, guillotine.
What do you mean? What do you mean? I see everyone across the political spectrum doing some form of saying guillotine or, oh, lock them up. In what world are you living in, Ro? See, here's the thing. If you're a free speech absolutist, you have to follow through with being a free speech absolutist. These people are protesting, and this goes for anyone across the political spectrum has a right to protest.
You can't be shouting globalize the intifada or Zionists don't deserve to live.
Who's saying that, right? And how do you know they're not an infiltrator? It hasn't happened before, right?
What's being lost is that those few protesters who are inciting violence or engaging in that kind of anti-Semitism are diminishing the thousands of young people who simply want the war to end. And I guess I would say, look to John Lewis or Dr. King. They, in their protests, were above reproach. If some individual engaged in bigotry.
You know, it's interesting now how every single politician likes to use Dr. Martin Luther King as their end-all, be-all example of what it means to do a protest. But yet, if you look at the time when he was around, man, Washington, D.C. didn't like him. Democratic politicians didn't like him. Republican politicians didn't like him. And yet now he's put on the pillar of respectability because he's not here to really give us his words, right? Perfect scapegoat for all politicians.
They call them out first and loudly. So I'm proud of a lot of the young people who want to end the war. But they need to show the discipline. And some universities have. Look at Cornell, look at University of Minnesota, look at what's happening at Northwestern. There have been efforts not to have the police in, to have dialogue with the student protesters, to have much more peace and calm. And there are models for what can work in this country.
I want to pull up this video here. the First Amendment. This was in Philadelphia, in the great state of Pennsylvania.
I am here in a role that is a little different lane than some others. My job ultimately is to do justice and uphold the Constitution, and to do them at the same time. The First Amendment comes from here. This is Philadelphia. We don't have to do stupid like they did at Columbia. We don't have to do stupid. What we should be doing here is upholding our tradition of being a welcoming, inviting city where people say things, even if other people don't like them, because they have a right to say it in the United States, and where protesters also have an obligation to remain nonviolent and to engage in speech activity and in activity that does not become illegal.
People should have the right to protest. People have the right to free speech, and there should be communication.
I will be upping the volume for this video when I clip it, so apologies if you cannot hear it, but it will be upped up.
With these protesters in negotiations in good faith.
So what can we take away from this? Well, first of all, if Biden were to visit these college campuses, he would probably be booed for all eternity. Like, they would be screaming down upon him. They would be jumping down his throat. And more importantly, I think more people would come to terms and realize that the Democrats are not the good people that they say they are. Neither are the Republican politicians. Keep on coming with the big brain tactics, Democrats. Do you really think that your 2020 tactics are going to work in 2024? After what happened to these protesters, I hope all those activists and organizers will forever remember that the Democrats only came to you guys when it was safe for photo opportunities and to say and tweet things out to let your guard down. Never trust a politician. They don't have your best interest at heart. And I hope people wake up to this fact, especially once this 2024 election cycle is done.